Joining me now from Celtics blog and You Got Boston podcast is Noa Dalzell and Jack Simone from Hardwood Houdini and How About Them C's podcast. Noah, Jack, first time on the show. Welcome. How you all doing?
Good. Very good. Thank you for having me. And I mean, I'll let Noah speak for herself, but happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I will say when you first asked us to come on, I thought we were going to be talking about a 2-0 Celtics lead, what's the road ahead, of Thunder Celtics finals. So not exactly the circumstances that I was expecting, but looking forward to breaking down what's gone wrong here anyways.
You know, I mean, look, when I asked you two to come on, I was not anticipating 2-0 Knicks after two 20-point blown leads. Like, it's not just that the Celtics lost, but two 20-point blown leads in the second half. It happening in very similar fashion. Jack, you made a post shortly before we started recording this podcast about how you felt a lot of the reasons why the Celtics blew the lead in game one is very similar to what happened in game two. So what was your just kind of initial assessment after rewatching the game?
Yeah, so I rewatched like the collapse last night when I got home and then again this morning. And it was a lot of like the very start of it, like third quarter, whatever many minutes left, up by 20. The immediate thing is miss a good look or make a good look and then don't pick up in transition or get lost off the ball, like immediately compounded by a defensive mistake. And that turns into like 3 straight buckets for the Knicks. And then the Celtics eventually responded in game two. Like Joe Mazzulla called a quick timeout. Like you could tell he recognized the same issues were happening and he's like timeout. And then they actually got back on transition the next time they missed. But it was Jayson Tatum's transition defense, which is really bad. And it's always, or has been bad, like for most of this season, has really hurt them in this Knicks series because I think in game two, it was the Celtic. Derek White missed 2 wide open threes up by 20. KP missed a putback layup. And then Miles McBride just kind of like walked by Jayson Tatum for a dunk to cut it to 18. And when you say it in that context of like cut it to 18, it doesn't sound like much. But then when you look back with the history of what proceeded to happen, it's the start of exactly what happened in game one happening all over again.
How about you with your rewatch, Noah?
Yeah, honestly, I in the moment, it felt like maybe it was defensive, and there were some defensive, complaints that I had. I felt like Mikal Bridges scores 14 points in the first half of that fourth quarter, and you don't really see them up the defensive pressure on him. Like, as a basketball player, that's your dream. It's just you in the basket at a certain point, and the Celtics were kind of willing to live with it. But I will say, they had about 15 opportunities to put this game away, and so to me, this was a mental game of missed opportunities. And if you go to that locker room afterwards, Derek White had about 4 chances to win this game in that fourth quarter. All he needed to do was hit one of those shots. Jaylen Brown had a few great looks in the mid-range. Al Horford, 1 of 6 in the fourth quarter. Jayson Tatum obviously is going to get a lot of heat for that last play, but he had other opportunities throughout the game. I've never seen a game, and I'm sure that I have, but right now it feels like I've never seen a game that you have so many chances. You literally need to hit one basket, but they didn't score a field goal from 8.5 minutes in that fourth quarter to the dunk with 19 seconds to play. And so you're not going to win playoff games against good teams if you endure that type of cold stretch. And they weren't close. Like, all of these baskets were way off. They are airballing shots. They're off the front rim, off the back rim. Like, they were not close. And that's a mental thing at a point. And we've seen it before with this group. And Al Horford alluded to that at practice on Thursday, that they go through these stretches where the shooting struggles are contagious. And I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a very unique phenomenon that this team experiences sometimes.
No, I wasn't thinking I was going to get to this thought so soon, but like, you're hitting it right on the head here, Noah, the mental aspect. And I can't help but wonder if it feels like the Celtics are playing tight. Like, it just feels like there's a lot of mental stuff going on with the way they're playing. I can't help but wonder if part of it is what's happening kind of from the front office side of things, where Windhorst on Thursday is saying how the Celtics are going to go through changes this offseason. Shams Charania talked about it last week, how there's going to be big changes in Boston. I can't help but wonder if this team were in the past. Jaylen Brown's gone through tight stretches. Jayson Tatum's been in his head, especially pre-championship. Everybody talked this year about how, oh yeah, they got the monkey off their back. They won the championship. They're going to play free and they're going to play, with no worries and all that. If actually there's more tightness this year, because there could be a feeling of, well, this might be our last run. Like, do you have any sense of that, Noah, when you kind of talk about the mental aspect? Like, maybe it's some off-court stuff affecting them here?
So I don't think so, because honestly, I don't think that was really news to this team. I think they went into the season nobody ever hit it. When I've talked to people in the organization, nobody ever hit it. That they know that this is a very unique 1-year run here. They brought everybody back for the most part. And so I didn't feel like the Shams report and the Windhorst report was really news to those of us that cover this team and certainly the players that are in this organization. But to your point, they are playing more tight and there is a level of pressure. And to me, it feels like everybody had the Celtics team just kind of destroying New York, right? The pundits, the betting odds, it was like they were supposed to win so badly. And it's just a tough place to play when you're such a heavy favorite against an actually very good team that was the fifth best team in the league all year. They were the third seed. This is the second seed. This is not a 1-8 matchup. But everybody's been talking about it like a 1-8 matchup. And I think when they blew that first lead, it was like it's kind of a ghost that haunted them in game 2 and they were not able to push through it. And they might not want to openly admit it, but I think it was more just that, the reality that they're probably thinking now, like, what is this thing with the second round curse that Joe Mazzulla has talked about a bunch this year, that no defending champion has been able to get out of the second round since 2019. So I don't know, Jack, maybe you feel differently, but to me, it's not the off-court, like, trade rumor stuff. That's been kind of in everybody's mind from the beginning of the season, but it's like, oh my God, how are we in this position that we're 0-2? And they do sometimes be a little bit entitled of like thinking that everything's gonna be easy, and then it gets a little bit harder.
It feels like people were talking about the financial stuff even in like the preseason. Like everyone kind of knew that the second apron was going to come into play. They probably wouldn't be able to bring the same team back. So I don't know if that's as much but like it felt like exactly what Noah said. Like they could feel what exactly happened in game 1 happening to them again in game 2. And what's weird about it is it felt like they almost let the talk of the game 1 affect them from the jump. Like they took the ball out of Jayson Tatum's hands in like the first quarter. And I get there's a part of it that like Jaylen Brown is having a lot of success posting up Jalen Brunson. He's getting into the paint. But they completely changed the way they used Jayson Tatum in game 2. He was like the primary ball handler. He played the exact same way he played in the regular season against the Knicks in game 1. He was attacking mismatches. The first quarter was awesome. And then they switch up the coverage. They're hedging more in the second half. And then game 2 comes along and they're sticking with him. They're not, letting him get those switches as easily. And they again go to hedging. But he was a screener. He was like not an on-ball player for most of the first half of this game 2 game. And then by the time you get to, the final few possessions and you stick the ball in his hands, like it felt like they were completely in their heads. There was a play in the fourth quarter, I think with 5 minutes left, when the Knicks are on their run. Al Horford passes up a wide open 3 at the top of the key, drives into traffic, chucks up a turnaround floater, and then
shot
and then guess what? Mikal Bridges is wide open in transition again. Like they were completely in their heads about what is the right shot, what is the wrong shot. I just listened to the broadcast and Reggie Miller says like 3 times, like they keep settling for threes. It's not about settling for threes. Settling implies you're taking what is not the best shot. Sometimes threes are the best shot. They just weren't going in, and then they stopped taking them. And when you stop taking them, it's so much worse than just missing the open ones.
I mean, look, I think Boston, like Mazzulla, and trust the system and all that. You're trusting the math. It's what worked. They won the championship last year. They had one of the best teams in basketball this year. But like sometimes it's just not working. Like sometimes it's just not working. And I can't help but think of watching this Celtics team and think of the 0-for-27 Rockets. Like they've missed 13? What was it? 13, 14 threes in a row in game 2, right? It's like, it's different. It's not 27, but it just has that similar feel where it's like, can you go to something else? Can you call a Tatum post up? Like, does everything from him have to be high pick and roll or at the elbows? Can you call a post up for this guy who's 6'9", 6'10", can play with his back to the basket or face up? Can you do that? Can you call one for Jaylen Brown? Can you just 3 or 4 times? Like, could we get a little bit more variety is what I keep thinking about, because Boston versus Houston, those Houston teams back in the day, it was Harden and that's it. Like Harden was the system. High pick and roll, isolations, Clint Capella off the roll, kick out to PJ Tucker or Eric Gordon. That was the system. But Boston has like a ton of dudes who can generate offense in different ways, 2 stars that are versatile. And look, we'll see what Joe Mazzulla does in game 3, but you got to give respect to Tom Thibodeau. He didn't use the 2 big lineup really all year at all. He's gone with it against Boston. It's done really well with Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns out there. It's only 15 minutes, but he's done it. It's been awesome. He's rolling with Mitchell Robinson. He's making some adjustments. Boston, I want to see if Mazzulla is going to continue, like, trust the math, shoot threes over and over and over again, or if we're going to see a bit more variety in the half court. Do you expect to see some of that? Was there any indication of potential changes at practice today, Noah, with the way the team was talking?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think if anything, you're going to see it was 60 attempts in game 1. It was 40 in game 2. It's going to be like 50 in game 3. They're going to move back up. And listen, I hear the 3 points complaint. It's such a difficult conversation because you really only have it when things have gone wrong. And that's why we haven't had it as much, in the last few years as we did in Mazzulla's first season. But I think they did go to 2-point shots in this game. And those were the worst shots. Like they really, like the Jaylen Brown forced the issue a couple of times, dribbled off his foot, like, turnaround fadeaways that were way off.
Post up. Like we don't see any back to the basket. Like, it's all from the elbows. It's still all from the perimeter,
Listen, like I don't think that in my opinion, I don't think the shot profile was really the issue in this game. And it wasn't the issue in game 1 either. Like you can say, systematically, like they need to overhaul things because now they're 0-2 against a team that they're better than on paper and that everybody expected to be winning. But they still built 2 20-point leads against this team and dominated the margins, as Mazzulla was happy to point out today, that they, had more shot attempts and free throws and all those things that he really values. So to me, this is, again, it's all about what went wrong down the stretch. And when I went back to watch that fourth quarter, I wasn't thinking to myself, like, I need to see a different shot profile than what I saw. I felt like there was a little bit of like a lack of maybe leadership in that moment of somebody to just say, like, let's pause here and kind of recollect ourselves. And, now you have guys missing layups. Like they missed more layups in these 2 games than I can remember in any 2-game stretch in the season. So I don't know, Jack, I think Jack and I watch we sit together on press row. So sometimes I feel like our opinions start to mold a little bit, but I don't know. Do you feel like the shot profile has been like, is that the issue here?
Well, I don't think my answer is going to be received well. I think the only part of the shot profile that was bad was that they passed up some of the threes they should be taking. That is going to be like the least. It's going to be the least popular opinion in the world. But like in my head, when I rewatch this game,
threes.
Well, we've spent too much time with Mazzulla this season.
60, listen, give me 70.
Listen, in my head, it's not about whether or not the shot they take is a 3 or a 2. It's the process of getting there, and it felt like a lot late in this game. When the Knicks were hedging and they were running the pick and roll, the Celtics just like let them reset their defense again. Like they were like Tatum early in the game passed up some of the pull-ups he took, and I get it, that's fine. Like get to the hoop a little bit more. But when you're doing that late in the game, and Jalen Brunson hedges and they get back, then the Knicks defense is set again, and they're allowed to get feet in the paint. They're allowed to set guys up. Like either take the pull-up 3. Or drive immediately off the pick and roll. Don't like wait a beat, let them get set up and then run your offense, because then you're not only later in the shot clock with less options available and less time to get a shot up, but you're also letting the Knicks reset their defense to what they want it to be. It's just like, I felt like they weren't going quick enough. And on top of that, it wasn't all Kristaps. The spacing in this game was absolutely horrendous. Kristaps was rolling off his screens at the worst time. He couldn't figure out if he wanted to seal Mitchell Robinson or sit in the dunker spot. So there was just completely clogged lanes the whole time. Pritchard got in the way a couple times at the 3-point line. Al Horford was in weird spots. Like their entire spacing out of the pick and roll in terms of like the timing of the big getting out of the screen and the ball handler actually getting into the action was completely out of whack down the stretch of this game. So I think it was less, the end result of what shot they got and more the process of how they got into their offense.
Jack, along those lines, I mentioned Mitchell Robinson earlier and how good he's been for the Knicks in only 15 minutes, small sample. 15 minutes, the Knicks have a 106.7 offensive rating, a 39.3 defensive rating. So Boston in those minutes, 4 turnovers, 3 makes. That's 1 of 15 from 3, 2 of 10 from 2-point range for the Celtics when they're going against Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns front courts. What has been so effective for that Knicks front court with Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns?
Yeah, I mean, he attacks the offensive glass, and the Celtics have done a terrible job of getting defensive rebounds outside of Jayson Tatum, and that's really all he can do in this series, it feels like. And then on the other end, he's just always in a space to affect the shot and I think part of it goes to the bad spacing. Like, I don't think the Celtics are spacing out of those spots better. There's a play, I can't remember exactly when it was, but Kristaps went to set a screen to get Mitchell Robinson on Jayson Tatum, and then Peyton Pritchard set another screen to get Mitchell Robinson on him, so Mitchell Robinson wouldn't be in the paint. Like, they're actively trying to get him out of the paint, and then they messed up the spacing from there and threw a weird lob to Kristaps. But like he has been such a presence around the rim that the Celtics just aren't able to get some of the drive and kicks that they're looking for. And again, just like as a whole, I also don't want, like, we're talking sitting here, oh, this is what the Celtics did wrong, this is what they need to do. I don't think any credit should be taken away from the Knicks. Like, I think they deserve 100% of the credit for winning these games. This shouldn't turn into like a Russell Westbrook, did you win this game or did the Jazz lose this game situation? Like, the Knicks get all the credit. They won these games. They did exactly what they needed to do. And I don't want any like discussion of this is what the Celtics did wrong be misconstrued as the Knicks don't deserve credit for these wins. They do. Like you said, Tibbs has done a great job of going to these different lineups, these different coverages against the Celtics that they didn't show in the regular season. Mikal Bridges turned into Scottie Pippen in both fourth quarters. Like, they've done exactly what they need to do to win. And like you said, Mitchell Robinson, the double bigs, just his presence around the rim has completely disrupted what the Celtics are trying to do.
I mean, on the note of the Knicks, I feel like, a lot of talk this week, and rightfully so, about the Celtics shooting 25% from three in the series. But no, it's not like Brunson has been amazing. Like, he just hasn't. He's shooting in the series 15 of 42. It's not like he's been unbelievable. It's not like he's living at the free throw line. I'd be a little concerned there from the Celtics side of things, because it's like, yes, Boston might shoot better in game 3 and beyond, but also Jalen Brunson is due for a monster night.
For sure. And I think that's the reality here is that's kind of made me more impressed with the Knicks through these 2 games, is that it's not that they've been carried by their 2 All-NBA players. They've been honestly carried by the guys that they acquired in the offseason that everybody wasn't sure if they'd be worth it, right? Like OG
5 first-round
Anunoby.
picks.
Yeah, OG Anunoby, 29 points in game 1. I don't know that they accounted for him. I don't know that they, he was really the separator. Mikal Bridges has just been instrumental across these 2 games defensively, way better than what we saw from him during the regular season. Comes up with a game-winning steal in games 1 and 2. Obviously has single-handedly kind of brings them back in early in that fourth quarter. So, like, it's been those other guys. And yes, Jalen Brunson is primed for a big game, as is Karl-Anthony Towns, who hasn't been, he was better in game 2. And at the same time, I think that you got a whole roster of Celtics players that are also primed for better games. So this has been some ugly basketball at points, but it comes down to, and we hear this all the time, and it's a little bit of an overused trope, but like, it comes down to making game-winning plays. And right now, the count is heavily in favor of New York making those game-winning plays. And last year's Celtics team that won the championship made game-winning plays the entire postseason versus the Pacers, versus the Mavericks. Like, they were the ones that did it ultimately. And we're seeing that kind of shift in the other direction. And it's hard to explain all the time. There's not always a rational explanation, but it's very visible just from being around this team that that's happening.
Yeah, I think Brunson's due for some better games. Tatum should be. And Jack, you mentioned in passing kind of like how Boston went away from like Tatum, the creator, a bit. I looked up the numbers last year during Boston's run to the championship. Tatum averaged 47 touches per game in the front court, according to NBA.com. Brown averaged 33. This year versus the Knicks through 2 games, Brown's averaging 37 front court touches per game. Tatum's down to 34. What do you make of that? Why are we seeing less of Tatum getting opportunities in the front court? And is that something that you think needs to be changing moving forward in the series?
Yeah, I asked Joe about it today at practice, and he basically said, like, they like what they get out of him as a screener. The Knicks are staying really, like, pressed up against him, so it's their way of, like, keeping a good defender out of the action, or at least that's, like, partially my theories. Like, if you keep Jayson Tatum as a screener or away from the ball, that's one less lengthy defender, which I get in theory. He also talked about how the Knicks have changed their coverage against him, which I think has also impacted it. They, like, opening this game, the Knicks have just lived with switches. Like, they lived with Mitchell Robinson, lived with Karl-Anthony Towns in space against Tatum, and it didn't work too well in the first quarter of game 1, but they haven't gone back to the drop defense that got cooked in the regular season. And again, credit to Tibbs for that. But like, you can't abandon going to your best player. Like, I don't fully understand it. I don't think it's the smart play. And for as, impressive as Jaylen Brown's first half was the other day, I know, like, Noah turned to me, she goes, I was like, yeah, Jalen's been really good. He goes, he has like 16 points on 17 shots. Like, it wasn't an efficient source of offense. Like, it wasn't working as well as it looked like in the moment. And the Celtics were up by 10. And again, we sit up there on press row talking, and I said, like, it simultaneously feels like they should be winning by, 20 points and also down by double digits. Like it just looks weird the way they played offense. They went to more Jaylen Brown, in the high post. They went to more Derek White pick and rolls. He found a nice chemistry with Luke Cornett. But like, you got to find ways to get Tatum going. He had a nice like cut off the ball in the first quarter, and I was like, okay, we're finding something, a different way of getting him a bucket, a different way of getting him involved. And then he missed like 4 layups. And like it's just a weird way that they've gone about utilizing him from game 1 to game 2.
And I think he's worth like committing to getting him going early on. And he's a guy that kind of eases into games sometimes. Jalen historically is their first quarter guy, especially last season, and Tatum kind of like lets the game come to him. But right now, the role players aren't playing to the same level that they were during last year's playoff run. And so I think you kind of need his heroics right now. Like game 3, you need a massive game from Jayson Tatum. Like you need him to be the hero. Everybody kind of knows that. I think he knows that. And so in that sense, like you can't settle for him being 1 for 7 to start the game and kind of uninvolved and think that that's going to work out, because it just hasn't so far in the series. And against Orlando, he bailed them out. There were some very ugly offensive stretches, and you're not seeing them go to that as much right now.
Noah and Jack, it seems like we both kind of agree, or disagree rather, on shot profile. Like I want to see a little bit more post-ups. I want to see like sprinkle a little bit of that in, especially because you're not getting it from Porzingis. Maybe compensate with a little bit from there with Tatum. We might disagree there. However, Noah, I want to know, is there a number one adjustment you have in mind for Mazzulla? Like, what's the number one thing you want him to change? And if that's not where you thought I was going with it, where did you think I was going to go with it?
Well, I know what I'm ready to talk about next. So I thought maybe you were. Well, it works for your question, though. It works for your question. So listen, the people that know me know that this is a player that I feel strongly about what he's able to bring to the table. But I think you ultimately need to go more to Peyton Pritchard in these moments too.
Oh, because future all-star.
Listen, we don't need to get into it right now.
Your famous post.
We don't need to get into it right now. But listen, they were 2 for 11 from 3 in the fourth quarter yesterday. Peyton Pritchard was 2 for 4. Last 6.5 minutes, he doesn't play in this game. He has been one of their most consistent defenders in this postseason. I would argue that with anybody, because I've rewatched these games multiple times, watching specifically him on defense. He's navigated screens better than anybody. He has not lost focus off ball. He has not been a liability for them whatsoever. Previous conceptions around what he can do on that end are not accurate right now anymore. And he's actually not in the shooting slump. And he's not just the guy that comes off the bench that scores in bunches. Like, he's not a microwave scorer that's like your guy that maybe gets you a little bit of points. He was their 6th man of the year. He was the guy that was available all year long for them. He was a huge part of why they won 61 games, despite players being in and out of the lineup. I really did not like when I watched this game that Al Horford played 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. He had no legs. Kristaps Porzingis is, a shell of himself right now. Sam Hauser's out, and I think he'll probably miss some more time with his ankle sprain. I think when you need a basket, like go to one of your top shot makers. He was their best 3-point shooter this season, except for Sam Hauser, I believe, when it was all said and done. And Hauser's not available right now. And he can create his own shot, and he can do a lot with the ball in his hands. And I felt more comfortable when he was out there yesterday. So I thought about whether I was going to go there today, because I know that that's like a kind of a niche thing to focus on in the scheme of all that's gone wrong. But I truly believe they're almost there. Like they're losing these games by a hair. And he is somebody that I think you can rely on both ends right now to just trust him down the stretch. Like he can give him more than the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, especially because he's actually not in the shooting slump. He's the one guy that's not.
Do you agree, Jack?
Yeah, I think you could go to Peyton Pritchard more. Like he missed a couple big ones yesterday, but the more important part was like he was open. He got open. Like he found ways to get himself open. And if there's any guy on the team I trust to stay out of his own head, it's Peyton Pritchard. Like that guy, like for better or for worse, will just keep shooting. And in this case, it's for the better. Like you need guys who are confident. You need guys who can be able to make tough shots.
And ultimately, Pritchard and Hauser are the 2 pure shooters on this team. Like they're not the highest volume shooters on this team, but they're the 2 purest shooters. And so sometimes when they're in a shooting slump and it's like Tatum and Brown are combined 0 for 20, and it's like, how could this be? It's like, well, they're not pure 3-point shooters. Like I watch them warm up before every game. This is not like they're great players, they're versatile, but it's not like unfathomable that Jaylen Brown is 0 for 6 from 3, because that's not the strongest part of his game. So right now, like if you're going to keep shooting the threes, I think you want to make sure that the guys that are pure shooters that have been doing it their whole career, that do it best, have those looks. And so it's unfortunate that Hauser's out. I think it's more significant than maybe people realize, because he is so critical to their spacing, and they already have a limited rotation of who they trust. So go to the guy that's healthy, that's been doing this for you all season.
I think you're spot on. First of all, I mean, Pritchard was 6th man of the year for a reason.
Really appreciate that.
I mean, he's not just like a guy who has a 25-point game and then a 3-point game. He's actually pretty consistent as a sixth man. He's like not Jamal Crawford, like that type of sixth man where he's like a very hot scorer off the bench, that type of guy. So I think for Boston, like look at the Knicks. They get Bridges, they get OG Anunoby, they get Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson, the size. They're built to try to slow down Tatum and Brown. Peyton Pritchard offers just a completely different ingredient that would change the way the Knicks have to think about slowing down Boston's half-court offense. So, like, while I do think Tatum needs a lot more point forward, point Tatum touches, I do think, 24 minutes in game 1 for Peyton Pritchard, 22 minutes in game 2. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe you should have Peyton Pritchard closer to 30 minutes per game with some more touches and more shooting opportunities, because that talk about variety. I'm asking for more post opportunities for Tatum and Brown. It's variety to have little guy Peyton Pritchard, Jack, creating and generating some offense. So like that's where I'm kind of coming from. Like, just change things up. I just want to see a little bit more. I don't want to see 73 pointers unless they're coming from different types of sources of offense, like back to the basket and it forces a double because you scored a few times, which Boston did in their limited post-ups, by the way. And then it maybe forces some help shading over and it creates an easy kick-out opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes too much sense when you're like, even if you want to lower the 3-point volume, having guys on the floor who can hit the open ones is going to be beneficial, right? Like if at the end of the day, everyone's going to sit here and talk about they're shooting 20% from 3, and it might get old and you can find fresh takes. And I mean, I did that. Like, I think their defense was a big reason they lost game 1. I think in game 2, their offensive spacing was really bad. But at the end of the day, you make 2-3 more threes and we're not having these conversations. Like we're just not talking about it. If you make, one of the threes you're supposed to make, it doesn't matter anymore because you win the game. And I think Peyton Pritchard, obviously, with a guy who has shot as well as he has on increased volume like he has this season, on the floor more, you have more opportunities to get to those looks.
All right, so I said this to Drew Hanlon earlier in the podcast, how there's been 35 teams in NBA history that have gone down 0-2 at home, and only 5 of them have gone on to win the series. I'm going to go through each of you one by one. Noah first. Are the Celtics going to become one of the teams that makes a comeback and wins the series? And then Jack, you go afterwards.
So when we did our initial post-game show, I said no, but I've re-educated myself. I've watched this game a little bit, heard from the players. I think they're poised to do it. So I lean yes. The fact that they've been better on the road than at home this season does give me some, it is something to point to. Like, they have been a road team. The Knicks have also been better on the road. So both of these teams are a little bit of an advantage kind of when their backs are against the wall. So I'm not going to say like I'm super confident, but I lean yes right now that they're going to be able to get this done.
Jack?
I think similarly. I remember at like halfway through the Knicks comeback last night, Noah was like, they're going to lose this game. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? She goes, actually, I need to think about that because I said if they lose this game, they're going to lose the series. And I don't know if they're going to lose the series. So I don't, like, it was like a mental pretzel. And I think I was in a similar state.
Had a lot of hot takes as the game was unfolding yesterday.
I think I was in a similar state as they were losing. I'm like, after the game, I was like, this series is done. But at the same time, like, it's just a matter of 3-point variance for me. And do I think the Celtics can correct themselves? Like, we have seen the
Joe
Celtics
Mazzulla should hire you, Jack. You're a perfect disciple for his message.
Don't say that. You've
really been picking up what he's been putting down this season.
I think it's tough because you're coming off a series in the Magic series where you won without threes. But that's because they weren't giving you threes. And so there were more opportunities to get inside and there were more lanes for you to score in those other ways. It's harder when a team is more okay with the threes and you're still not making them because then they can also double down on the other shots you are able to get. And so it's just a hard situation. I don't think the Celtics are incapable of scoring in other ways. I just think it's a lot harder because the Knicks can put extra pressure in those places because you're not making the threes when they're open. If I had to pick, are they going to come back or not? I think it would be like 51% yes. Like at the slimmest of margins, I think they're fully capable. I think they're the more talented team, even though they haven't played like it. They have not been the best team in this series through the first 2 games. But based on everything we've seen from them over the past 2 years, mentally and their ability to respond after losses, I would give the slight edge in terms of I do think that they can come back and win the series.
I think they can. I don't think they will. I don't think they will. Down 2-0. Going into MSG, that's not just any road game. MSG is going to be crazy. But you know what? Like, Jack, you're right that Boston has done well with their backs against the wall. Sometimes when they face adversity, that's when they kind of just straighten up and fix what's going wrong. That's when they're laser focused mentally. But ultimately, I do think, like you mentioned, the Mazzulla curse, like getting past the second round as a defending champion, like that's a real thing. It's hard to repeat. It's just hard to repeat. It's hard to get back to the finals. And Boston, unique situation in that, like, it wasn't their first deep run. They had like 7 deep runs in a row, or 7 playoff runs in a row. And then they had the Olympics afterwards for 4 of their key players, even though only 3 of them played. Tatum's still there. He's still in those practices, those hard practices. It's been like a lot of basketball. And so whether it's mental because of the offseason stuff overhanging the team or whatever else is going on with Porzingis, whatever it might be, or whether it's tired legs or just poor shooting variance, there's a lot working against what they do. And that's shoot an all-time level amount of three-pointers. So like I lean towards with Mazzulla at some point this series, you're going to have to make some adjustments, change things up in the half court offensively, and we'll see if he actually does that. I think game 3 is going to be pretty telling with Joe Mazzulla's true ability as an NBA head coach. If he's truly elite of the elite or merely solid or very good and a great quote, a great meme. That's undeniable.
Game 3 is going to be a post-up clinic now. You're gonna be very happy. It's going to be just post-up.
Gary Washburn will be first to ask a question post-game. Like, Joe, I told you so.
For years now. Yeah.
No, they're going to do a bunch of post-ups, and if they lose, Joe's going to start the press conference. So what do you guys think of that? What you guys think of the shot profile?
There was one game where they missed a bunch of layups, and Joe was like, nobody wants to ask about all the missed layups, right?
He is so funny. He is hilarious. What a character. Noah, Jack, thank you guys for joining me today. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you.